we literally are a community. And I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, Tanya. I mean, that's what it's one of the things that we started off, back in January 2 years ago. We're already at 2.5 now. And we started off as a 12-week program. We're now a 16, going to be 17, 18-week program. And one of the things that Tanya hit on, I really like to point out too, is that we always give our doulas, even once you graduate, if we add materials, we always will add that in there, and then you have access to that. And you're always, whether you're doing it a live class or if you're doing a self-paced class, you're always welcome to pop into our live classes if you want to see a module done live. So, and like she said, we all have been connected since then. And so thank you so much, Tanya, for sharing. Let's see.
You're welcome.
Heather, do you want to share next?
Sure. So I got, as most of my family thinks, weirdly involved with death and end of life, and kind of immersed myself in it when my father passed. And I started researching. I started a vigil program in one of our local hospitals, and I started researching. I had gotten connected with one of the most amazing souls on this planet, which is Barbara Carnes. So I actually reached out to Barbara because I was overwhelmed. There were classes over here that cost thousands. There were classes over here that were, a nickel and a dime. And I was like, I was just overwhelmed. And Barbara said, IDLM. Well, if it's coming out of her mouth, I'm going to have faith in her. So I signed up, and I honestly have been far more than impressed. I mean, they under promise, over deliver. It has just been impactful classes that you can network with other people. I've called Anna and Pam, God love their souls, with some of the craziest concepts, just trying to figure out things, because I'm going to be more in line with an advocacy and promoting doulas. So, they're helping me navigate through that kind of stuff. And the resources are just, they're endless. It has overwhelmed me. And I use that term, I can actually say that. I feel pretty overwhelmed with how gracious they've been, and the education you get. And like Tanya said, just being able to get into that resource whenever we need. Pam and I, good Lord help us, we've had plenty of good conversations. But I remember when I signed up or something, Anna called me on my phone, and I remember looking at my phone going, really? Like 15 minutes ago. They were on it, and it's never stopped. So
thank you. We try. It's a passion that we have here to connect with everybody and stay with everybody. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate it so much. Okay. All right. Who's next?
I can share what it's like with me.
And
I'm Ro. I'm a grief coach, and I was looking for a doula program to expand my scope of practice. I had done some research also on the internet with different schools, and what really was the clincher for me was IDLM had a phone number, not just an email as a contact. And when I called the number, Anna answered. And she spent about 20 minutes with me, answered all of my questions, and I have loved the ease of communication with the instructors and the classes with this school, the heart-to-heart contact and relationships that have developed, and the support that you get even after you complete the course is really quite amazing. They're wonderful to work with. They're amazing souls. They're funny and just priceless to be around. So it's just been an invaluable experience that I love sharing with other people, and always refer anyone who's interested in doula work to IDLM.
Thank you, Ro. And I have to throw in, those beautiful emails that we send out, our newsletter, those have been written by Ro, and she has done an amazing job. I've gotten so many compliments on the job that she has done. like one of the things we talked about is how we're a family commitment here. We're a group here. We're a family. And so when I needed help, because, you know, starting out IDLM, I did everything. And then Pam came on board and then things just kept getting bigger and bigger. And so we're very much so very still tightly connected. And so reached out to our community, and Ro said, hey, I'll help you do that. So she has done a beautiful job with our newsletters. So thank you, Ro. You're awesome. Thank you. All right. Do we have any more graduates? I don't want to miss anybody. Mary. Oh, you're muted.
All right, let me unmute myself. First of all, Tanya, I would like to invite you to drive up to San Antonio to visit the abode here, because it sounds like it's a home very similar to the one that you want to open in next year. So,
okay. Okay.
you know, reach out to me or to Anna, and we'll give you a tour, and would love to have you see it up close. And it'd be a wonderful model to follow.
Okay. That would be great. How far is San Antonio from Dallas? My daughter lives in Dallas.
We are about 5 hours, wouldn't you say, Anna?
Yeah, about 5 hours or so. Mhm.
Okay. Well, I'm planning a trip out there, and I will be out there for about a week. So I'll try to incorporate that into it. But
Oh, I think it'd be worth your while.
Yeah.
thank
Well,
you.
everything that the other graduates have said, I totally agree with. And I just felt, I'm a social worker, and I've done hospice social work, and I've done home health. And there was just such a big piece of that end of life journey that was missing. And going through the doula classes just really filled that information for me. And I probably shouldn't even be on this call, but I'm just trying to just, you know, take in all the information that I could gather. And it's just a very rewarding program, and you won't be disappointed. You'll love it. You'll love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so we actually here at IDLM, like I said, this is really a soul's calling. And so we have partnered up with hospices, and what Mary has mentioned is the abode home. So we have a partnership with an abode home, what's called Abode. If you go to abodehome.org, it is a nonprofit home that has 3 bedrooms where people can come and live there for their final 3 months of life. And they don't pay anything. It's absolutely free. And so we have such a big need here that we're extending out. So we're training for end of life doulas and getting them more into homes and helping families, as well as all the staff there is also trained as doulas. So thank you. All right, well, let's dive in. I'm gonna share my PowerPoint here, and we're gonna get kicking on this. All right. Well, I'm so happy that everybody has joined in with us today. We are going to start our introduction to our death. Sometimes we're called end of life doulas as well. Work. So let's dive in. Like I said earlier, I know we've had a few people pop in. My name is Anna. I'm the founder of International Doula Life Movement. I started IDLM, and you'll hear me call it IDLM. We just call it for short. About 2.5 years ago. This coming January will be 3 years. We have graduated over 400 doulas. We're now more pushing towards 500. I have been doing this line of work for 25 years. I actually started in the medical field when I was 16. I started off as a CNA. I used to volunteer at the hospital, then went and got my CNA, worked in a nursing home for several years, worked my way up there, became the staffing coordinator, and did all the training and things there, and dabbled into EMS and was an administrator for an EMS, private EMS company. But hospice always kept calling me back. And so no matter if I was working at the hospice or when I went to go working into EMS or working at the nursing home, I would always end up having clients privately that I was working with that were on hospice. And so found a hospice that was like my second home here in San Antonio, and started working there in their crisis care and the inpatient unit. And so really started seeing what I was already doing in that role was that of a doula. And so I started looking around and diving in, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second, but when I get to our IDLM story. But I've been doing this for over 25 years. I have my private practice. I'm also an on-staff doula for 2 hospices here in San Antonio, as well as the director for end-of-life certification for Abode Home. And so pretty busy, but I love it. And it's just been a total blessing to be able to connect with so many different people and to make sure that everybody, and that's one of my biggest goals, is that everywhere across the world to have a doula. You don't have to be terminally ill to have a doula, an end-of-life doula. You need a doula now. And we'll talk more about that. But without further ado, that's just a little bit about me. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Pam so she can share a little bit about herself.
Well, hello, everybody. It's so nice to see everybody this evening. I am an end-of-life doula. I've done this work for over 40 years. I always called myself a transition coach. I'm like a lot of you. I didn't know what a doula was until I think it was 2020, and they started talking about death doulas. And I was like, wait a minute, I've done this work. I do this work constantly. So I met Anna in a training that she and I both were taking, and she was at that time talking about opening up a school. And since then, we've been fast and furious friends. And I really love the concept of what we do here. It's like those that are graduates said, Anna and I really work hard at being available to the students 24/7. We have a beautiful working relationship because her days start earlier and end earlier, and my days start late and end late. And when I say my days end late, you can generally reach me up to 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm a night owl, and so it works pretty good. That way, Anna and I go, I guess there's basically 3 hours of every day that both of us are sleeping. And so, but if you needed us, you could reach out and contact us. My passion is end-of-life training in advanced care. I believe everybody needs an advanced care plan, and I created and teach the advanced care planning course. Currently, it's 14 weeks, and it is going to 16 weeks this coming September. And I also teach another course called 365, which is a 12-month course, and it's a course in facing your own mortality. And that class meets twice a month. So at IDLM, we really strive to give you everything you need to be successful. Short of Anna and I coming in and running your office for you, we give you every tool. We help you set yourself up. We'll help walk you through getting an LLC or whatever you need to get your business structured to meet your needs. We are passionate about end of life. And there is not enough people serving end of life. Our numbers are growing. Anna and I talk about the silver tsunami, and we are facing a silver tsunami, and that is older people aging that have nobody to depend on. Because we went through a generation, almost generation and a half of people saying, oh, I'm going to chase my career and I'm not going to have family. And then their family that they were depending on, mothers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, they're all passing away, and these people are left without anyone to help take care of them in the end of life. So this field is wide open. It is growing day by day in needs, and you're really, I don't want to say you're on the ground floor because you really are on the ground floor in some ways, but in other ways, you're rising rapidly. And the only other thing I'll say here is, and I'll springboard off what Heather Harmon said, and that's when she said, there are a lot of programs out there. I will tell you that Anna and I've been friends since this was a seed in her head, but it still took her over a year to convince me to come on board. And the reason was I'd taken a lot of those overly priced courses myself. I'd seen what was being marketed to people, and I just didn't want anything to do with that. I wanted to be somewhere where education was the number one priority. And with Anna and I, that's the number one priority. We both are accessible, as everybody that IDLM spoke and said. You can always reach us by, I always joke and say, you can reach me by cell phone, text, email, smoke signal if nothing else works. But you can always get in touch with Anna or I, and we're always there to help our students. So there's a lot going on at IDLM, and we are growing by leaps and bounds. And we have some really exciting things that are going to be happening over the next 24 months or so. So it's a good time to get involved with us. Okay, I'll shut up. They want to know more about the program.
All right. Well, thank you, Pam. So let me tell you a little bit about our IDLM story. So the reason I started IDLM was because being a mom with 4 young children, looking at those $3,000 programs, I just really couldn't afford it. And I made sacrifices to be able to afford one of those $3,000 programs. And I was very disappointed, walked out, didn't get a single thing out of it. And as I started diving in more and ended up actually starting a group, a support group for those other doulas, because they were walking out and not knowing where to begin, not knowing what to do. And I'm like, wait a minute, you just paid $3,000. You're walking out of a program and not knowing what to do. That's a problem. And, you know, like we've discussed, there's a lot of other schools out there. And it just really bothered me that I felt that people were taking people's money and not giving them what they needed. And so I then started working really hard and got IDLM launched a couple of years ago, and we have just been going ever since. There are no governed bodies over doulas, which meaning those of you that are maybe a nurse, or you think of nurses or doctors or different technician areas where you have to go and take a board exam and go through, you know, logistics of different things. Well, doulas don't have to do that. We're non-governed. So because of that, and because I feel that training should be affordable, and I believe that there should be a commitment of family community, that you shouldn't just go through and learn something and then not have someone to turn back to. I believe in a very strong foundation of a community. And one of the things I was just sharing with Pam the other day, that when I launched IDLM, I knew that we needed a tight-knit community, and I knew that doulas needed support. But looking back over these last couple of years and seeing what we've got now in our community, and how people come, and if you need a doula, you have a doula family that will come there and be your doula, you know, because we all need a doula, right? And so just being able to see all those beautiful relationships that take place in our community, just really, really make all of this hard work totally worth the while for it. And so that's just a little bit about IDLM. So tonight we're going to cover a little bit of these topics here. I'm not going to read them all through to you, but we're going to be going through quite a bit of information, and I'm going to be sharing a case study with you. But first, what is exactly an end-of-life doula, or sometimes they're called death doulas? It means the same thing. Some people call them death midwives. Some people call them death educators, you know. So it's all within the same realm of things, meaning. But a death, for this purpose of the presentation, we'll be using death end-of-life doula. A death doula, end-of-life doula, is a non-medical professional, meaning you don't have to have medical background to do this. You can definitely, it does help, but especially like our program here, we've designed it so that anybody could come in and be able to serve the community and serve those that are in need. But we're trained to care for terminally ill person's physical, emotional, and spiritual holistic needs during the death process. And you might have heard me earlier say too, you need a doula now. We need to start working with people before a terminal illness, because more and more we're seeing it throughout our industry here in the healthcare. Doctors are diagnosing and transferring people over to hospice way too late. People need to plan now. They need to get their funeral plans done. They need to get what do they want? What do they not want? They need to get all that stuff done now. So that's why I feel like it's very important that everyone should have a doula right now. So what do we do as a doula? As a doula, we're there to create sacred space, you know, hold a space for that person that's going through this transition. We're there to provide emotional and spiritual support, initiate conversations about the dying process, you know, and that could be a family that's forcing this person to eat while they're dying. We don't want to do that. That's going to cause more problems later on. So definitely going in and educating about the dying process and what that looks like and things that are going to be coming. Support the family and staff and reducing burnout and emotional fatigue. You know, one of the biggest things I've always hear from clients that I work with, when I signed up for hospice, I thought it was 24/7. They said, we're here 24/7. Well, no, they're by phone 24/7. So a doula, we don't have that regulation that says we only can be there for X amount of time. We're there for our clients throughout that process and can come in, whether it's 30 minutes, an hour, 4 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, whatever that case might be that client needs. We're not bound to saying we can only be there for a moment. We also can acknowledge the mysteries and unexplained events that happen during the dying process. You know, sometimes families don't realize, they think, oh, mom's getting better. You know, she would really look like she was going the last few days. And all of a sudden she's responding to us. Well, is that a rally? You know, so we talk about those things and we educate about those things so that we can help them and explain those unexplained events. One of the things as a doula that we can do is also provide what I call my angel vigil watches. Not everybody does this, and that's okay. Not every doula's practice is the same. And so what we can do as a doula is we can provide, if you choose to, you can be there in vigil while that person is transitioning. Be there to answer all those questions for the family and reintegrate that education that you have given them and talk to them and explain and say, okay, this is what's going on now. So as that vigil, you can also be there to create that sacred space, the lighting, the smells, the music, the sounds, different things that we can do in that vigil to help the family. We are also an advocate for clients and their families. Sometimes we have to be the one to say, you know what, your loved Theo John is transitioning and he's starting to get agitated or he's having pain. Let's, we're going to need to end vegetation. Let the family have that time. Maybe it's, here in Texas, we have large Hispanic families. And so we talk about like having 50 people in one room or in a house coming to visit because it's the mom, the cousin, the whatever, and everybody in the family's coming and they linger there. Well, then the immediate family don't get that special time with them, that small time to have with them, that intimate setting time. As a doula, I have no problem saying to the rest of the people, and this is why it's so important to plan, because this is a conversation that I have when I'm doing planning with our families is, what do you want? Who do you want around your bed? Can we set up some type of schedule for visitation? How do you feel? Who do you want not here? Who do you want here? Going through all of that. So it's so important to plan and advocate for your clients. We can even help them start with legacy work. Legacy work and projects does not have to be something drawn out or huge. It can be something short, quick, and simple. And we give you tools like that here at IDLM to use with your families. We also help families navigate the medical system. I cannot tell you in the last year how our medical industry is just broken. It really is. And it's getting worse. And I have had so many families that I've been working with saying, man, Anna, I'm so glad that you are working with this because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know all these things that you were telling us, or I didn't know that these were our rights. It's so important that we, are there to do that and help them navigate through that system. Companionship, to be there. Maybe the family's not in town. Maybe they can't be there all the time. Maybe they have to work. So you can even come in there and work as a companion, help them go to appointments, take them to do their things that they do in daily life, go to the park, whatever the case might be, or just simply being there to grab them a drink or to bring them their food, provide companionship. We're also, one of the things that I feel very strongly about, and we cover this in one of our first modules, is the patient rights. Think about the last time you went to a doctor's office. Did you sit down and read those Bill of Rights that they make you sign every time you go? Did you sit there and really understand what those rights were? As a doula, we should know those patient rights for wherever we're located, because it's important that we educate our families, our caregivers, our clients that we're working with about their rights. We can also assist with end-of-life paperwork, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. We can also sit there and help families with grief support throughout the process, is being there with them as their doula. And then at the end, we've already done so much work throughout our time that we've been working with our clients and our families, that then when we get to the end, when that person passes, that grief work support that we give is just something natural that comes together. Also, funeral planning. Many people don't know you don't have to buy what the funeral home is selling you. And so many clients that I have worked with, especially in the inpatient unit, our inpatient unit is where they would come coming out of the hospital. Maybe they were getting discharged and they were still in an event. They needed to be taken off, things like that. So a lot of times it was these clients that we would have that had a massive stroke or a heart attack at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and was so severe that they were put on a ventilator. And they came to our IPU, our inpatient unit, and was taken off. And families, this is all happened in 2 or 3 days. Families are like, all this is going on. They don't even have anything planned. And so what are they doing? They're out there in the calling and going out to go to the funeral home and making all these plans and buying things they shouldn't even been spending money on that they don't even know about, because they're all doing it through a process of this emotion. So this is why it's so important as a doula, we educate them about ways that they can save money, that they know that, do they know that they have the right to do a home wake at home? We have, as a citizen, we have rights to do that. And so we get to explain that and share that information and knowledge with them. So one of the big questions I always get sometimes here is becoming or using a death doula service something new? Nope, it's not. The term doula was used since 1980 in the relation to birth and postpartum care. First applied to death care in the late 90s. And the reason that happened is because, well, let's take it a step further. Years ago, before we were probably any of us here were ever born, what did families do? They knew that their loved one was ill. Someone stayed at home. They cared for them. They knew that they were coming close to death. So what happened? The community went out, the family went out, started digging the grave, started making the coffin. And so that doula role was already there. And then the Civil War happened. And what happened was, because they had to transport soldiers, funeral industries happened. And so in the 90s, the late 90s, people started taking that back, and that role of the doula started coming about more. And here we are, we've had COVID. So death and dying is more at the forefront of people's, we just went through a pandemic. And so death work is not something new. Another question that I commonly get asked is, what is the difference between a hospice and an end-of-life doula or a death doula? So the hospice team manages the medical care. They're going to say they need these medications, that they should need treatments, or whatever it could be, right? They're also, typically the insurance does cover. I'm not met a case yet that insurance hasn't covered. And they also do charity patients as well, because there's a certain percentage that they have to do that is charity work. Then they're also there to pronounce the death. They come in, you don't have to worry about lights and sirens and calling 911 and possibly having police. A friend of ours, actually, a couple of years ago, her ex-husband and her got divorced, but they still had a really good relationship. He became very ill. He came to live with her. He passed at the home. Well, he was not on hospice, just one of those things. He just went to sleep and passed. And so she got interrogated by the police. So I share that with the families that I work with sometimes when we're talking about hospice, when I'm educating, because if they're on hospice, they don't have to usually have the police come out. Hospice will usually send the information to the medical examiners and have that all set up so that when that time comes, the nurse basically comes out, pronounces the death, will call the funeral home and provide a little support to the family. A lot of times that support is not very long. Why? Because they have to probably get to another death, or someone is in need that they need to get to. So, but also hospice does provide bereavement care. And let me tell you what that bereavement care usually consists of. Letters that go out the first month, 3rd, 6th, 9th, 12th, and 13th month. They may have a memorial service, and they may offer some grief support here and there. But as a doula, our role is we are with the family and their care, the whole family and the caregivers. We make such a connection, because the biggest thing is about a doula is we're making relationships and those connections that we have. So when we do our bereavement work, it's more of a personal connection. We're also there as a doula, we're there to reinforce the medical care. Whatever the hospice is educating, we're there to reinforce that and talk with the family. If they're not getting it, we can be a liaison to the hospice and say, hey, Miss So-and-so is not understanding this. Could you re-explain, please? We're typically private or contracted. Some doulas, and it is becoming more and more because I'm seeing a big difference, because not only do I work with hospices, 2 hospices that I'm on staff with, I'm actually here at IDLM, we are making more connections where we're working with hospices to provide education for doula work. And so it is becoming more and more a thing I think it will definitely be booming more as time goes on. As a doula, we can have defined times. We can say, hey, we're going to go Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to noon, whatever that case might be. We're not stuck to saying, oh, I can only be there for 15, 20 minutes. We can be there longer and provide support longer. We're going to be there to provide non-medical care as well. Non-medical care, go with them to appointments or help them set up reminders or make sure that they get up and don't forget their walker behind. So those are the difference between the hospice and the end-of-life doula. So why are end-of-life doulas needed if hospice is available? The elder care population continues to grow and families need the support. Our patients are wanting to go home and families are now taking family members home. And so some are different, not even in the medical field whatsoever. They have no clue what to do. So as a doula, we can be there to support and help them understand and guide them through this journey and teaching them that, what they need to do and what things, tricks of the trade. We also, as an end-of-life doula, we fill in the gaps of medical care. You know, like I said before, our medical industry is hurting. And so doulas bridge in. So even if your client is not on hospice and maybe you're working with someone as a companion doula, but you see a steady decline, you can educate the person in charge, the medical power of attorney, educate them. Hey, you know, I've noticed there's been this decline. And maybe it's time to get the paperwork ready. And maybe it's time, you know, when the time comes to look at hospice. Another thing is that has been really, really dear to my heart is, and I'm working with some oncologists and trying to educate our medical industry, unless they are palliative doctors, hospice people that are working in this industry. And I'm talking about those that are not in the ER, in the ICU, those doctors, the cardiologists, the oncology, they're trained to save. They never seem to have this conversation or want to have this conversation. The truth of the matter is, there are two things guaranteed in life: taxes and death. There needs to be a communication. There needs to be more training for them. And as a doula, we can help bridge that gap and help them. Be an advocate for a family to say, oh, I don't know what to do. Well, let's look at quality versus quantity of that person's life. So we're there to give that support and guidance. The other thing to consider is there is Medicare reimbursement guidelines gives the hospice team very limited amount of time. And they cannot always be around with the family and helping the family and educating and being in the home 24/7. And as we all know it, end-of-life care is 24/7. So as an end-of-life doula, we can work with hospice and the family to make sure that this journey is done the way it needs to be done. You only get one shot with death, right? We're only going to die once. So we need to make sure that we do everything possible to make that as a smooth transition and a sacred transition for the family and for the client. So some of you might be asking, is this, something that for me? Well, I can tell you, if you've been maybe an experienced caregiver or in the medical field, that always helps. But you don't need it. You don't need it. If you like helping others and have the ability to be an advocate, you can be non-judgmental. As a doula, we are non-judgmental. So whatever my belief systems are, that goes out the window when I work with a family. I'm there to help them, and I'm not there to judge them. I'm there to basically, I like to think of it as a card table, and I'm laying out all the cards. All the resources are those cards, right? And so I lay out all those resources and that information, and I give them the information, and I let them make the best decision for themselves. I may not agree, but you know what? That's none of my business. I'm there to be non-judgmental. We meet people where they're at. Maybe they're not quite yet. Maybe they've just got a terminal diagnosis and they're not ready to process this all. So maybe I can come in and be a companion and help them, support them. And let me tell you, a lot of times what ends up happening is sooner or later, they will get to that point where they just feel really trusting with you. And then they open up. And then you as an end-of-life doula can go in and educate. Maybe they were scared. I've had clients that I've worked with that are scared of utilizing hospice because they had a bad experience with another family member. So we can definitely help with that as well. We can hold space for a complex of emotion, even sit with someone as they're dying in the family. Do end-of-life doulas make money? Yes, they do. That's what I've been doing for a living for all this time. I'd like to point out this little saying right here. This is from the Grave Woman, and she really hits it right on. Becoming a funeral, death care, or end-of-life professional is not a vow of poverty. You deserve to earn the living, serving others during one's most difficult time in their lives. Stop letting society guilt you into thinking that you don't. If you can commit yourself, you can educate your community, because a lot of our doula work is being out in the community and educating. You know, Heather is doing something wonderful in her town. She's educating them about doula work and what we do. Because if people don't understand or know about it, there's so many people out there that still don't know what we do. So it's so important that we get out there and educate them on what we do. If you can also we give you tons of resources in a free business 101. We even have an IDLM mentoring group. And so you take advantage of those things. Like Pam said earlier, we work with you to basically short of hanging the opening sign for you. Let's come back. Okay. So what do we offer here at IDLM? It's a certification that we could do. We cover companion, life planning, and end-of-life care. In a few minutes, I'll share with you a little bit more. But what I want to say about this is I'm very straightforward, because I wish somebody would have been straightforward with me before I spent that $3,000. So I would have known what I was really getting. And so we do include life planning, but we have a secondary course. And the reason being is our live classes are typically about 2 to 2.5 hours long. Pam does a whole 14-week course. So there's no way we can cover everything, but we lay the foundation down. And then we also do a very heavily extended end-of-life care. Students that end up completing our doula course, they also receive discounts on standalone continuing education and other discount certification courses. You always get a discount for being family, because once you sign up for us, we're family now. So you get discounts. The options of formats that we offer for our courses are a live and self-paced. So our live classes meet online, just like we are here today. We meet for about 2 to 2.5 hours. They're recorded. So in case you have to miss a class, you can always get the recording in our student dashboard. We meet for the first 10 minutes or so. It's housekeeping, any questions that you might have popped up while you were studying. We have our lecture, and we do breakout rooms. We do activities as well. We do take a break in between our modules and answer. We always have a Q&A and discussion after every module that we cover. In our self-paced, what happens there is that you get to watch live recordings from our previous classes. You will do all your assignments and things, same things that we do in our live class. You're just doing it on your own, and you can go as fast as or a little slow as you need to. We do really encourage you to take advantage of our one-on-one mentoring. Like Pam said, Pam's met with people late, 12, 11 o'clock at night. I have done evenings, mornings, things like that. We will work with you to try to do that, because we want to make sure that you're actually understanding all the information that you're receiving. So what we do here at IDLM for our end-of-life doula course, we do cover these modules. And so I'm going to just briefly go over each one. We have our orientation, module 1, and then we do our doula work 101, where we talk about palliative care, because as a doula, it's really important that you understand the difference between palliative and hospice. We talk about the good death, the death positive, patient rights. Then we go into the code of ethics, scope of practice of doulas. We also include a module about inclusivity practices, LGBTQ+. We also have a wonderful module that we do on module 3 called Getting in Touch with Your Own Mortality. As a doula, you need to explore your own mortality, because you're going to be helping other people explore their mortality. We talk about self-care for yourself and for your clients that you're working with. We talk about the stages of end-of-life care. So one of the things I want to share here, we're very, very lucky. We have a wonderful working relationship with Barbara Carnes. And so we have the privilege of sharing her 3-part series that if you were to purchase on your own, you'd be spending about $300. You get that recording. We record it, and I have special permission to show it, and special permission to have it housed in your portal system. So you can always go back and watch that video. And it's a really nice lecture video. It's a 3-part video that we watch that she does. We also talk about obituaries and eulogies and vigil planning. We'll discuss VSED, voluntary stop eating and drinking. And then we also will talk a little bit about medical aid in dying. We have a whole module dedicated for a whole class that we talk about coping with grief and loss for doulas. You as a doula will be working with families that are going to have a complex of emotions. You need to know what you're seeing. And so it's really important. So we lay down a groundwork there. We do also offer a grief doula program that's 12 weeks long, but it is a very good foundation for you to have. We also talk about the common diseases and infection control and PPE. You need to know these common diseases and what are things that you're going to be seeing the hospice do. What are things that you can do as a doula to help your clients? We talk about pediatric hospice and parent loss. Some people say, oh, I could never work with pediatrics. Well, let me tell you, not every client that you work with as a doula is going to be 80, 90 years old. And even at that, they are going to have great-grandchildren. You may be working with someone in their 20s or 30s and they have children. So, and they always end up gravitating to the doulas. We also cover our companion doula where we talk about communication and teledoula, patient documentation, record keeping, contracts, doula paperwork. We give you templates and we don't brand that stuff. Those things are in documents where you can go in, put your logo, put your name, edit to where you want it, but we give you that whole template of that. We also cover home wakes, cremations, funerals, green options, celebrations, and ceremonies. You know, like I said earlier, every patient client has a right to doing a home wake at home. And many people don't know that. They have the right to have a green burial, natural burial. And we talk about that and how that works. We also talk about life planning. Like I said earlier, it's unfortunately, we lay down a good foundation there, but we have to add that in there. And Pam, do you want to share a little bit about that there and what you cover and why we do that?
In what I cover, all the things we cover. In advanced care planning, it's really important that anybody, I don't care how old you are, if you're 18 to 80, you need an advanced care plan. And an advanced care plan should be done when you first move away from home. People aren't aware of this. In advanced care planning, we talk about the different types of advanced care paperwork. Every state has its own advanced care directive. They're written by attorneys, and you need one to interpret it. So there are some other advanced care tools that are out there, and we talk about the other tools that can be used that are accepted by state. We talk about a physician's order of life-sustaining practice. We talk about wills and estates. We talk about the things that go unmentioned that families always need in the end, which is birth certificates, previous death certificates, copies of insurance, copies of mortgages, credit card accounts. There's so much that goes into advanced care planning. The misunderstood part of advanced care planning is most people think it's those 3 or 4 or maybe 15 pages that a doctor hands you when you go into the doctor's office. Ms. Jones, do you have an advanced care plan? No, I've never filled one out. Well, the nurse hands you this stack of paper and says, take it home, fill it out, bring it back. Did anybody explain it? No. And so what we do is we dive into exactly what an advanced care plan is asking someone to agree or not to agree to. And we do this so that you in turn can educate your clients on exactly what they are or not agreeing to. As an example, an 86-year-old woman that is dealing with cancer would not necessarily want to agree to CPR. In fact, I can tell you, I'm a 68-year-old woman, and if anybody comes at me and does CPR, if I don't die, I'm going to haunt them if I do, because CPR is brutal on the body. Done properly, it's going to break your ribs, it's going to fracture your sternum, and you're going to have after effects from the CPR, and you're not guaranteed you're going to survive those. And when CPR is done, if it's not done properly in the first 2.5 minutes, you're going to suffer brain damage. Now, who wants to run those risks? If you're young and healthy and you've got children at home, I understand somebody saying, yeah, try CPR. But at 69 years old, 68 years old, 80 years old, don't do CPR on me. And I am a big proponent of that. So in my class, you really get a dose of don't do this. But we go over all the different things that are asked in an advanced care plan and explain exactly what the ramifications of that choice can be. Because at end of life, what you really want to be concerned about and should be concerned about is the quality of your life, not the quantity of your life. If you're bedbound and you're breathing on a machine and people can't converse with you, and this is the way you live for the next 6 to 10 years, is that a quality anybody really wants? No, that's just quantity. You want to look at what the quality is versus the quantity. And that's what we talk about in deep depth in advanced care planning. And as Anna's already said, and we said earlier, and some of the students said, the advanced care planning course is 14 weeks right now. It will be going to 16 weeks because I'm adding 2 new advanced directives that have just begun to take on a lot of notice and people are including now. But when you do these courses, you come away in your advanced care planning class having completed your own plan and being ready to help anybody across the United States, because I give you all the tools you need to access every tool you need for whatever state you might be servicing. And again, as Anna has already said, we are an ungoverned body. There's no certification that says you can't go here, you can't go there. So it's very beneficial if you've got friends or family in other states to be able to help with advanced care plan. And I could go on because I'm passionate. I think everybody has to have it. But back to you, Anna.
Yep. And, one other thing too, that this is something when you add advanced planning, some people I've heard say, oh, well, you can't do the work full time. Yes, you can, because I do it full time. Pam does it full time. Our instructors here at IDLM are all what Miss Pam calls our boots on the ground, because they all have active practices. They are doing this as a living and they are working with clients. And as a doula, if you work your business full circle, you'll hear me say this quite a bit, is full circle is doing some companion work, doing your life planning, because you know what? You need to go back every year and check with those clients that you helped complete those life planning documents for, because what happens? What happens in a year? Deaths, new births, change in relationships. All those things happen and they forget. I met a 98-year-old lady who we were talking, and I was explaining to her what I would do as a doula, and I brought up advanced planning. She says, oh, honey, do you think next week when you come visit, we can work on mine? All the people that were in mine are all dead already. It happens. So it's so important to have these conversations and to repeatedly go back every year and check with those clients. And we show you a little way to help you keep up with that too. But then we also talk about making memories, legacy work, and all the different things that you can do as a doula to help your clients. We give you some ideas and some resources as well. We talk about end-of-life religions, because remember earlier I said, as a doula, we're non-judgmental. We meet people where they're at. If we're not in the same religion, it's a good base to have a little bit of knowledge about what's going on in all these different religions. So we do touch on about religions as well. We also I'll go back to the case studies in just a second. We also do, because it irks me that people leave a doula program and not know what to do, not know where to begin. So our doula program, we make sure that you leave the program knowing what you're going to do, not being able to say, oh, I don't know where to start. No, you will know where to start. And this is why we give you a free business 101. It's a 7-module self-paced, and we do it live several times throughout the year. And it's a free workshop that we do when we do it live. You come in, you can, me and Pam teach it live, and you're able to ask questions, have discussions. We brainstorm ideas. It's really awesome. But you can do that self-paced, and there are workbooks in there as well for you to help you become clear on what your intentions are as a doula. Every doula can be different, and that's okay. That's the glory. And, you know, I always say there is a doula. Every person out there has a doula for them. Whatever your good quality traits or your passion is, there is people that need you as a doula. So it's really important. We also offer a NEDA prep as well, if you choose to join the End of Life Doula Association. But here at IDLM, we are going to be launching our association either in the fall or beginning of the year. We'll have our own association started. And once you, all of the people that have been enrolled and students and graduates will be in there. You don't have to take the proficiency test that we'll offer because we already have such a rigorous program. We do have assignments and throughout the program as well as quizzes. There's one final exam. Everything is open book. Don't get worried. I know we have sometimes test anxiety and things like that, but that's not to worry. We do also have our case studies, and I'm actually going to share with you one of our case studies. And the case study is basically, and sometimes people get scared with it, and I have to tell you, don't be. You are going to see that this is an amazing way to understand, and this gives us an opportunity to see that you know how to work as a doula from start to finish. And so I want to share with you a case study so you can see what it's like. What does that doula role really look like and how it can look like for you? Now, granted, this one I'm going to share with you is done by Craig, who's one of our graduates. He is a professor. He used to be a professor here in San Antonio, but now he's moved. But he is a professor and does a lot of end-of-life work. And he did a little acting, had a little bit more experience there. But I think it really gives a good overview about what we do as a doula. And so I'm going to share this quick video. It's about 8 minutes long, 9 minutes long. But don't worry, when you do yours, you don't have to get all technical like he did. But just take a look at it and really see. And you'll also notice in this video, he uses the templates that we give y'all as well. So here we go.
I received a call from Mr. Johnson that he was interested in working with an end-of-life doula. His nephew, Dwayne, lives in Boston and can't make the trip to Chicago very often. His family had engaged a death doula when his mother-in-law was dying and had a very good experience. He explained that his uncle only recently started talking about his dying and had made no preparations at all. We agreed that his uncle should call me if he was interested in talking.
My name is Samuel Johnson. I am 87 years old and I'm dying from heart failure. If you talked to me 6 months ago, you would have known how far I've come in just being able to say that. I had my first heart attack 15 years ago. The doctor turned me into a cyborg. I've had 2 heart attacks since then.
Mr. Johnson suffers from mitral valve prolapse that led to an enlarged heart. He was implanted with a pacemaker 10 years ago and an ICD about 3 years ago.
That last heart attack was a doozy. This defibrillator in my chest shocked me back to life, but I swear it was like a mule kicking me in the chest. I don't want to go through that again. I've lived a long time. I've outlived all of my friends and just about all of my family. I love collecting and I love life, but I don't love the life that I can have now. So Dwayne pushed me to reach out to engage a dying angel, as he called it. We found Dr. Klugman from his writing in the Chicago Tribune. Dwayne made the initial call and then I called him.
Over the phone, I started filling out the intake form. I explained to him what, as a death doula, I could and could not do. He said he would like someone to manage his medications in a pill box, and I explained that was not something I could do for him.
The doctor said I should be in hospital. I told him I don't want hospital. I want to die at home.
I talked to Mr. Johnson about getting hospice on board for him. One of the challenges is that he lives alone and doesn't have a primary caregiver. He gets daily visits from Meals on Wheels and his dog walker, Victoria, who takes Queenie out every day. In the intake process, I completed a form that included going over his medical conditions and discussing hospice, what it was, whether he had engaged with it, who was on the team. Then we talked about his needs and put together a care plan that included engaging more with hospice, estate planning, a safety assessment, funeral planning, advanced care planning, vigil planning, and a plan for what would happen to his beloved dog, Queenie. He wasn't too interested in a legacy project, but would entertain it. Much of the form was filled out during our initial few meetings, not just the first call over the phone.
So Craig said he wanted to come over and meet me. I don't really like people in my home, but he kept saying how important it was. And since I can't get out much, I said, okay. But he should know I'm not much of a homemaker.
As part of our initial meeting, I did a safety inspection, and I was totally shocked. Mr. Johnson's home was generally neat but grimy. There were some electrical cords crossing the floor that could be a tripping hazard, and not much food in the kitchen. He spends most of his time in a gray lounge chair. He even sleeps there. The dog walker comes several times a day to let out Queenie. Mr. Johnson is adamant that he wants to die in his home. I will talk to Dwayne about getting a cleaning service out. We also talked about the work that we would do together. Mr. Johnson was interested in advanced care planning, being connected with an attorney for estate planning, vigil planning, and funeral planning. He did not seem to have much death anxiety. I wrote this up into a contract, and we agreed upon a package price for that work. We also made sure his nephew knew about the contract and was in agreement. Mr. Johnson wanted me to visit several times a week, which was helpful as going through the advanced care planning process takes time. We also agreed that once the paperwork was done, I would continue to visit on an hourly charge basis. One of the things we did a lot was the New York Times crossword puzzle. This was a favorite activity of his, but his eyesight was failing, and it helped to have someone to read the clues to him.
I couldn't believe all of the paperwork we had to do. He wanted to gather my birth certificate, marriage and divorce certificates, insurance information, house papers, my expired driver's license, and passports, like I'm going anywhere.
In advanced care planning, we filled out a directive for care that asked for comfort care only. He appointed Dwayne as his medical power of attorney and Victoria, his dog walker, as his second. Victoria was a wonderful help. She was willing to come and spend time with Mr. Johnson and do some light cleaning and cooking. I worked with Mr. Johnson's physician to complete a provider's order for life-sustaining treatment. One conversation I was able to facilitate between Mr. Johnson and his doctor was over deactivating the ICD and the pacemaker. They agreed to turn off the ICD, but not the pacemaker. Dwayne located an attorney who was able to come out to the house to create a last will and testament and a living trust. In Illinois, you can avoid probate by having those documents notarized. I also found Rego Brothers Funeral Home that came out to the house and arranged pre-planned funeral services for Mr. Johnson. He wanted a very simple green burial, which was available at Irving Park Cemetery, and they charged a flat rate of $2,000. When discussing what kind of funeral he wanted, Mr. Johnson shared that he was a Mason, and that was a game changer. I reached out to the local lodge, which immediately organized a meal train and a schedule of volunteers to spend time with him. Having regular caregivers made it possible to get Journey Care Hospice on board. The Masons also have a prescribed funeral service, which made Mr. Johnson happy. He got excited about his funeral, wrote a note to be read there, and we wrote his obituary together. We had just begun discussing the idea of a vigil. Mr. Johnson was starting to drift in and out of conversation more. He was not eating much at all, his strength was slipping, and he would fall asleep often in the middle of talking. All of that was normal for the transition stage. When I could get his attention, Mr. Johnson said he wanted just a quiet space. He did not want a fuss made and wanted to limit those around his bed to Dwayne and Victoria. I could be there, and Queenie, he wanted his dog there. As for scents or sounds, he requested nature sounds, particularly spring rain, and that his room should not smell like a hospital. Victoria called me on Thursday night that Mr. Johnson was having difficulty breathing. She described it as gulping breaths, and she could not wake him up. Mr. Johnson had quickly moved to the active, imminent dying stage. I called Dwayne and suggested that he get the first flight out if he wanted to say goodbye. I also called Hospice. Dwayne arrived Friday afternoon, and I handed him a sheet that I give to clients' families that has Ira Byatt's 4 things to say when someone dies. I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, and thank you. Hospice sent a nurse to be available. She gave some pain meds after I noticed Mr. Johnson seemed to be grimacing. Mr. Johnson passed away on Saturday at 7:03 a.m. Dwayne, Victoria, and I were there. I told them to take as much time as they needed. Dwayne wanted to clean up the sheets and change his uncle into nicer clothes, while the hospice nurse assisted him in doing so. While they were caring for Mr. Johnson's body, I called Rego Brothers Funeral Home to collect Mr. Johnson, and then I called the lodge. I chose to attend the funeral, and it was beautiful. Mr. Johnson was buried at Irving Park Cemetery, and as per the funeral plans, Dwayne had a simple but elegant tombstone erected.
Well, everyone, I hope that helps to give you a little bit of a clearer visual of what we do as a doula and our role and how we can work with clients and help our community. So before I open up for questions, I just want to share our perks here at IDLM. Like I discussed earlier, we give you a free Business 101, 7 modules with workbooks. We have an online graduation that you can invite friends and families. We send you a certificate out for your certification. You also get a listing in our free IDLM doula directory. We also have a community, and this is given free. And in that community, and I'll show y'all that in just a second, you have access to our book club society, more continuing education trainings, ongoing graduate support. We give you free updates to our course anytime we add more resources and add modules to our courses. We also feel that it's very important as a doula that we have our own grief support. Whether it's your family you're dealing with grief or if it's a client that you've worked with for a while, we want you to be supported. So as a doula, it's really important that you have someone to turn to, and that's what we offer here at IDLM. We do a monthly grief support. We also do family events as a doula here at IDLM. We even have doula state groups for everyone that we can connect and help each other. We have the Movement, which is our community app, and it's ran on an app called Mighty Networks. You get free access to that. Excuse me. And you get to go in there, and I will go ahead and take you in there and show you what that looks like and how that app is, so you can kind of get a visual of it. Let me share this tab. So this is our community. You can access it on your desktop or on your phone through the app of Mighty Networks. You can see here, we have different groups. So here, we usually have you start off here, and this will guide you through how this all works. We have our information desk, and I apologize if I'm getting messages, it's gonna beep. But we also do have our news and announcements. We have a doula job board because I get calls for people looking for doulas. And so it's just easier for me to post in there or look through our directory as well. You have a link where you can connect with me and Pam. It shows you our direct link to book us. We also have a student success and continuing learning where we have our free library of resources and workshops and industry discussions and whatnot. Then if you take any other courses other than our end of life doula course, we do have a group for that course as well. But we also have groups for our courses. So Pam's course, her 365, we have our pediatric doula course program, our dementia program, medical aid in dying, all the different courses that we offer, grief. Those we do have special groups for those courses for those that paid to get into those courses. Then we also have these other groups, and all these are free. So we have doulas in Canada, Florida. We have a Judaism death group. We have a group for our nurses. We have our death positive talk. We have our grief support group. We have our book club society. And then we have our doula mentoring business, doula mentoring group. And this is where we help you with your business. And then up here, you can go, we have all of our events and workshops that we do that are free for our community. They're all here. So like we have a death positive talk once a month. And you can actually, what's really cool about the app is that you can download the app, you can hit the notifications, and it'll send you a little notification on your phone that your event's starting as long as you RSVP for it. The great thing is you can go to the past events too and go in and watch the recordings of our past events. So for instance, we had a book club, and so you just click it. And then you'll see that we have the link right here, and you just click the link and you can watch the book club if you missed it, or if you want to go back and watch it. The only things that we don't really record are our grief support and our death talks. We do try to keep those a little bit more sacred. But we have different training. This was a CE night that we did earlier in the month of March. We had another group of people coming in. We had education of different stuff here. So there's just tons and tons that go back for over a year here since we've had this open. So all of that is here for you. And then you can go to upcoming. So like, for instance, coming up in the month of April, we have our death positive talk. We have open offices time. We have our doula mentoring group. We also put the classroom links for students just to make it a little easier for them. We have Dr. Warren coming in and talking about essential oils and aromatherapy. We have our book club's going to start when my time comes. And one great thing with our book club is they do try to get the authors to come in. We can't always have every author come in, but we do have a good bit of authors that come in and speak. Here's our grief support group. So we just have a lot of different things that are coming, that come through as well. And so it gets updated every month, the month before. So for the next month, everybody knows what's going on. But that is our community app. And I'm going to get back into our PowerPoint. So you're probably wondering how much, when can I join this? When can I get started? So we do have a live class coming up April 17th. That live class will be 16 weeks. On the 17th week, we'll graduate. We meet once a week from 7 p.m. Central, just as we did tonight. Same thing for the class. We'll start on the 17th. We'll go through each week, go through the program, and then at the end, you'll have a graduation. We are going to actually have the graduation for our April class. You'll get your certificates right after class, but we won't have the graduation until December because we take all of our doula programs and can have one big graduation. So, but everybody will be invited for that. You can invite friends, family, and whatnot. We do offer payment plans. Here at IDLM, like I said before, we wanted something to be there for people to have the opportunity, if they're called to this work, to have this affordability. So we do work with you. If the payment plans that we have listed on the website doesn't work for your budget, just reach out to me. I'll work with you. We want to make this program affordable for anyone that is called to doing this work. So that concludes, and you can always go to internationaldoulalifemovement.com and then click courses, and you'll see the course there. You can sign up. We also, if you need to discuss more, you're welcome to stay on, or you can book a one-on-one with me or Pam. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Stop record.